Welcome to SI Now. I'm Robin Lundberg here with Amy Campbell, and we can pour some out for the Chris Paul never making the conference finals talking point.
For the first time in his career, Chris Paul won't be home watching the conference finals.
It looks like we messed up. That's actually the top of yesterday's show.
Oh, we're out of
not
order.
Today's,
That's
yeah.
horribly embarrassing.
Yeah.
All right, well, back to business. We'll get to the Celtics' future matchup with the Cavs in just a second. But first, let's talk Philly. The process continues, but the Sixers are done for the year after Boston took the Game 5 win. Star rookie Ben Simmons, of course, wasn't ready for their season to end.
The feeling right now is not, I didn't want to be done. I feel like I had a lot more to go, but you got to look at the positives and the negatives and, keep moving forward.
So Simmons naturally frustrated with how the season ended. But, Robin, how would you grade this season overall of the process?
It has to be an A. I mean, look, you're grading it on a curve, but this was a team that won 28 games a year ago, over 50 this year. How could you possibly give them anything else other than an A? Plus, they discovered that both Embiid and Simmons can play.
Right.
Of course. But it's the final year that they're graded on a curve. Ben Simmons cannot have a performance like he did in this series next year. He has to refine his game. He has to get better shooting. Embiid has to be more efficient in his post-ups, getting the ball, kicking it around. So they have to take that next step, or else next year could be deemed a failure. But there's no way you could dub this year a failure considering what they accomplished.
I completely agree. They exceeded expectations in every way. And like you said, now we know Embiid and Simmons can actually play. There had been so many questions with the injuries. We didn't actually know what we were getting out of those guys. And it's interesting because Markelle Fultz this year is in the same situation, but this team still exceeded expectations. And this series was a lot closer than the 4-1 looks. They kept it tight in many of the games, took that last game into overtime, into overtime. The one game into overtime. Game 5 was tight there at the end. Those situational moments that I think another year of maturity will actually help them kind of cross that line. But I think your point is right that this is the last year that we give them kind of that cushion.
And you can learn to make adjustments like having Simmons play off the ball and be the screener and then the secondary playmaker in a Draymond Green type of role if you get another ball handler in there. Of course, another ball handler could be LeBron James. He's still in the playoffs, but that hasn't stopped speculation about his future, and the rumblings about him and Philly have picked up of late. Do you think the Sixers' elimination makes it more likely LeBron picks Philadelphia?
More likely, yes, because LeBron is a guy who definitely cares about the narrative, and if he got knocked out by Philly, then there would be no chance that he would go there. There's no way that he's going to put himself in the same conversation as Kevin Durant when it comes to going to the team that knocked you out. So that's something that matters to LeBron, and there would be no way that he would do that. Will he go there? I don't know if I see the fit with him and Ben Simmons. I think both of those guys need the ball in their hands. I think there's some other places that are a better fit for him, but does it make it more likely? Yes.
LeBron has said, apparently, according to reports, that he wants to play off the ball a little bit more, and Simmons would afford that luxury, and then, of course, he would give them the guy that can create in any and all situations. The reason I don't want this to happen is that Philadelphia is interesting on their own. To see the development that is already a cool story. If LeBron goes somewhere else, I want him to go somewhere that's not that interesting right now, that then becomes more interesting. Paul George to the Sixers makes some sense to me as an upgrade over Robert Covington.
Well, Dwayne Casey was voted Coach of the Year by his peers, which is not surprising. What is surprising, Celtics coach Brad Stevens received 0 votes, not 1. You know who did? 8 other coaches, including Doc Rivers, Terry Stotts, and Nate McMillan. Of course, Brad Stevens didn't care, but I kind of do. Robin, this is absurd, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would have voted for Brad Stevens as Coach of the Year. The defense is that it was such a crowded field this year. A lot of guys deserve votes, and this is the problem with all these awards coming out later after the playoffs start, is you start looking at the playoffs and going, how is this possible?
Right.
Because Brad Stevens would be the playoff Coach of the Year, right? So that doesn't influence the voting at the end of the season, but it does feel a little odd that not a single vote went his way when he might be the consensus answer for best coach in the league right now, aside from perhaps Greg Popovich.
Well, and Brett Brown said he didn't get a vote. I would vote for him. He would get a vote from me, which is ironic because he could have voted for Brad Stevens and he didn't. I think some of the coaches that are in there, I'm shocked, got votes over Brad Stevens.
It is a little bit surprising, as we just talked about.
Yeah, well, and after all of that speculation and doubt, we are still going to get a Celtics and Cavs Eastern Conference Finals. It's the youngest team versus the oldest team, so lots of questions, but perhaps the biggest is how the Celtics plan to defend LeBron James. So firstly, Robin, who should Boston start? We assume it won't be Aaron Baines. And how should they guard the King?
Well, I think you know most of their starters. You're going to have Horford at that center spot to match up with Love. You're going to have Jaylen Brown, obviously, in the lineup. Terry Rozier in the lineup as well. Jason Tatum, duh. The next guy would be Marcus Smart to me because he gives you the chance to have someone who can competently compete with LeBron while also having the ability to go out and contest three-point shooters on the perimeter. Because here's the thing. When you're talking about stopping LeBron, no matter how hard you try to stop LeBron, you're not going to stop LeBron. So what you can't have happen is LeBron go off and the other guys rain threes on you. Look at the Indiana series. LeBron crushed the Pacers, but nobody else did anything, and it went 7 games. Compare that to Toronto. LeBron went off, and so did everyone else, and it was a sweep. Goodbye, LeBronto. So when you're the Celtics, you have to make sure that LeBron isn't getting his and making sure everybody else gets theirs, because there's nothing you can do against him. And ultimately, I know it sounds like lowest common denominator analysis, but that's going to be the difference because Boston is much better equipped than Toronto to guard everybody else on the Cavaliers, but they still can't stop LeBron. Al Horford, as great as he is, has had trouble contesting him at the rim, and I think that will be the difference, and it'll be the reason LeBron heads to an 8th straight NBA Finals.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like you said, when LeBron does get that help from the supporting cast, they crush people because he's going to get his. And we've seen this every time. People will do whatever they can to stop him. He will get his. And stopping LeBron is keeping him within reasonable numbers. And so you made the point the other day that Brad Stevens can scheme away a lot of things. There's nothing he's going to be able to do against LeBron.
Well, it's part of what makes LeBron so special, right? You bring extra attention to him. He's such a good passer. He's picking you apart.
Right.
So what you have to do is try and make him into a jump shooter. The problem is he can hit those shots now, but that's still the best way to try and defend him. Now, English striker Wayne Rooney, not quite in the LeBron James prime of his career, has agreed in principle to leave Everton and join DC United in the MLS. We've seen European greats make the move before. David Beckham, Thierry Henry, David Villa, just to name a few. Does Rooney get you any more excited for MLS soccer?
I think I'm already excited for MLS soccer. It's a league that's been growing and it's an exciting league. There's a lot of great things going on with MLS. This is another thing that's awesome. I think this goes in the category with, like you said, the European stars and the big names that have joined. And Wayne Rooney, of course, not in the prime of his career, but I think that that's great for MLS because these are the names that maybe the casual soccer fan knows these names. These are the stars that shine on the international stage. And I think it's great for MLS. There's no downside to this for MLS, and the fact that we're talking about this today and we're excited about it is great.
I would say you're right. There's not a downside, but I don't think it's tremendously helpful in the sense that it's the New York Knicks game plan, getting guys past their prime, big names past their prime.
That's a really good point, Robin.
And eventually, if the MLS really wants to make noise with one of these signings, they have to get one of them in the midst of their prime. And that would be the difference maker. That would be the wow, has the MLS really landed on the map here moment.
Well, I think they're working in that direction as well. And as you grow your league, as you grow the popularity of your sport, that this is how this happens. And so that's slowly building, slowly growing to that. And then I think that's the next evolution of that is a big name in the prime.
Moving to a more serious story out of the NFL, the Detroit Lions are sticking by new head coach Matt Patricia as they released a statement of support after a sexual assault charge against him from 22 years ago was reported in the Detroit News. Patricia himself said in part, quote, "I find it incredibly unfair, disappointing, and frustrating that this story would resurface now with the only purpose being to damage my character and reputation. I firmly maintain my innocence, as I've always done. I would never condone any of the alleged behavior and will always respect and protect the rights of anyone who has been harassed or is the victim of violence." The team was initially unaware of the indictment as they said their background check covered only criminal convictions. Did the Lions handle this appropriately?
To me, the problem with this is not that they missed it in the background check, which I could put some blame on there too, but I understand that you can't possibly know literally everything about a person. The problem with this to me is now that they do know, in their statement, the team statement, they said they spoke to Matt Patricia and they spoke to the attorney who represented him, and that was satisfactory to them. The fact that they didn't do any other research or talk to anyone else, that they spoke to these two people who, of course, have the same opinion in support of Patricia, that's the problem for me. And whether or not this is, I don't want to speculate on what should happen here, but the larger picture of the climate in the NFL right now, it looks really bad to see this taken so lightly by the Lions. They need to take it more seriously. And then if the end result is the same, it's the same, but it needs to be taken more seriously than it is.
Well, these things have to be taken incredibly seriously. Yeah. I also think you have to treat everyone involved very fairly if you can. Now, I would have no problem with them standing by Patricia if they did all their research and they truly believe him. I also would have no problem with them saying, hey, he's going to step away for a minute while we figure all this out and make the appropriate decision. But if you're putting all the blame on the Lions, I think it's also fair to point out this guy was employed by the New England Patriots for a long time. So if we're going to say, hey, how did the Lions not know about it? I think the same question needs to be asked about the New England Patriots.
I agree. And I wonder when the Lions had those conversations with the Patriots had to have not known or this would have come up. But perhaps did the Lions say, well, the Patriots, he was there for so long. We trust them. We know they run things very tight. They don't mess around. Maybe there was some trust there. I don't know. I think I have a lot more questions about this. I hope that we get more information as this goes and that we do see that it's been taken seriously. So shifting now to fantasy football, SI released its very first 2018 fantasy football rankings, courtesy of Michael Beller. Beller has a top three of Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, and Antonio Brown, with Odell Beckham Jr. coming in at 6 and rookie Saquon Barkley at number 7. Robin, would you reach for either Odell or Barkley?
I don't think Odell is that much of a reach. Obviously, the injury is a problem, and people are going to be concerned about that.
He played 4 games last year.
Of course, but once you get to that pick, the top guys are off the board, and I think you're looking at upside, and there are very few guys in the NFL who have the upside from a fantasy standpoint that Odell Beckham Jr. has.
Yeah, I just don't know how you can put Barkley over Alvin Kamara, a guy who's unproven, over a guy who's proven. Barkley may have an amazing season. That's the tricky thing about fantasy, but I would pick Kamara over him for sure.
We now welcome in former NFL quarterback and now QB consultant Jordan Palmer, who's worked closely with some of this year's high-profile rookie QBs like Sam Darnold and Josh Allen. Now, looking at all the rookie QBs based on where they were drafted, who is most likely to flourish this season, and who do you think is best set up for long-term success?
Well, it's a hard thing to forecast because there's so much new with each of the spots where these 4 guys went. Arizona Cardinals have an entire new staff. Cleveland Browns have a new offensive coordinator. The Jets have a lot of new positions there, and Buffalo's a new staff as well. So there's so much new around the entire team that it's hard to forecast. But I actually believe, I hate to just sound like the eternal optimist, but I really think all 4 of those guys went to really good locations for them. Regardless of what number each guy was drafted. I think Cleveland's a good spot for Baker to run around, buy time the way that Ben Roethlisberger's done in Todd Haley's offense. Sam in New York City is a great spot for him. They can kind of build around him. Josh Allen is Buffalo. And then, I know Arizona Cardinals really well, what they want to do with my brother just retiring. I know Josh Rosen really well. I think it's a really good fit for Rosen, just being really, really smart. Really getting the ball out of his hand quickly and getting a really good receiver in Christian Kirk to learn from Larry Fitzgerald. So I think all 4 guys went to really good spots for them. I'm excited to see how it pans out.
Well, let's talk about Josh Allen's fit there in Buffalo. You said that his accuracy numbers were not as bad as they appear since his college system there at Wyoming forced him to take some risks and his receivers really struggled to gain that separation. So now Allen finds himself on the Bills and they don't have the strongest receiving core either. Do you think there's a chance that he struggles early on? How much patience should people have with him there?
Well, I think all the fan bases need to have patience with these rookie quarterbacks. It's a big jump. Even from US, it's a big jump from Clemson to Houston for Deshaun Watson, who I worked with last year. It just is a big jump. But with Josh, I feel like he's really only played 2 years of real football. 3 years ago at Wyoming, he broke his collarbone. 4 years ago, he was in junior college. And before that, he was in low-level high school. And so Josh is really starting to kind of figure out what his game is, what his style is. And he has just a ton of ingredients. I mean, he's 6'6", he's 240, he's fast, he's got a giant arm, he's smart, he picks things up quick. So I think I'm excited to see over the next 2 or 3 years really what his style becomes, and because he's kind of capable of playing big in the pocket like Roethlisberger, but he can extend the play like guys. He can throw with anticipation, but he also has the ability to drive the ball all over the field. So I see a lot of ingredients in him that I'm going to be excited to watch how his game comes together.
In an interview with the MMQB before the draft, when you were talking about how talented Josh Allen and Sam Darnold are, you said no matter who the Browns take with the #1 pick, they couldn't screw it up. Obviously, they didn't take those guys. They took Baker Mayfield. So I have to ask, did the Browns screw that pick up?
I don't think so. I think they had a year to think about this. John Dorsey, the general manager, he was out last year, so he had a chance he didn't have to be the GM of a team last season. He was out. He got to break down more tape than any GM. He didn't have a decision he had to make every single day. He was a free agent general manager. So this guy had a year to think about this. And all I've heard for the last few years is how everybody thinks John Dorsey is the next great general manager and a great decision maker. And so, I feel like he knows exactly what he was looking for. And I think they got their guy. And, this is a walk-on who won the Heisman and was up for 3 Heismans. This is a unique talent and a unique type of confidence that we see in Baker. So I'm certainly not going to say that. I'm not going to say they made the wrong pick just because I trained the other guys. I'm going to give John Dorsey the benefit of the doubt and Hugh Jackson, and I'm really excited to watch Baker play.
Jordan, I'm curious, is there any quarterback in this year's draft that you've personally worked with, maybe in college or even at the high school level? I know you work with these guys for years and years. Any that you've personally worked with who's maybe flown under the radar a little bit?
Yeah, a lot of my conversations have been about Sam Darnold and Josh Allen, but the reality is I trained a guy named Kyle Allen. He was the top recruit coming out of high school, Elite 11 kid, went to Texas A&M and lit it up as a true freshman, and then didn't go well for him there, kind of got, punched in the stomach a little bit, and then went to Houston, and then a different version of getting punched in the stomach, just bad luck, bad timing. And I watched him handle both of those situations really, really well. And so I've known this kid since high school, and he ended up signing with the Carolina Panthers, which is a perfect spot for him. I think that's a team that can keep 3 quarterbacks and that wants to develop a young backup. They've had Derek Carr for the last few years to work with Cam. Now that Cam transitions into that veteran, franchise guy, that I think Kyle's going to be a guy who can come in and learn from Cam, but also really push Cam. And I think Carolina's a good spot for him, and with Norv Turner and Scott Turner there. And Kyle will be a guy that a lot of people need to watch.
So I want to hear a little bit more about your quarterback camps for high schoolers. What's the camp all about? And maybe what's one unique piece of advice that you would give out there or give to kids that are looking to improve?
I think what I try to do is really help guys reach their potential. That may sound cliche or cheesy, but I get a chance to work with school, high school, college, draft, and current NFL guys. I trained my brother the last 3 years. And when you do that, it really is just about figuring out what that next step is for you as a quarterback, and then having a kind of a roadmap to get there. So I try and take the approach of a physician or a doctor, in that I try and give guys a diagnosis of what's going on, and I want them to leave with a prescription. So I'm sweaty right now. I just got up. Me and Sam Darnold were throwing on the beach. He's back for a couple days. And with Sam, though, working with him for a long period of time, now Sam's at the point where when we work out together, I don't say anything. I wait to respond to what he says to himself. I want to help guys get to the point where they can self-correct. They can throw a bad ball, and they know exactly why it was a bad ball, and they fix it themselves. And so I try and do that on the physical side. And on the mental side as well, I do a lot of stuff with sports psychology, talking about how to build confidence, positive versus negative self-talk, leadership traits. And on the emotional side, there's a lot of stuff there too, because, guys like Sam, perfect example. And this kid was in high school 3 years ago. And now he's the franchise quarterback for the New York Jets, living in New York City. There's a lot of changes that happen in these guys' lives if things go well, and so there's a lot of work you need to do on the front end to prepare for it.
Well, Jordan, we appreciate you leaving the beach to come talk to us. Thanks for the time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Time to go through some of the biggest topics in baseball in a game called Fair or Foul, with fair being right and foul, I think you get it. Yep. PA guy, what's up first?
The Mets batted out of order yesterday against the Reds. Forget the manager, though. The worst of the blame should fall on the players. Fair or foul?
Amy, this is fair, right? Because you have one job. You know when it's your turn to bat, you should at least. The manager is balancing a bunch of things. So I hate to see him get all the blame when, get in the on-deck circle, get ready, start warming up. What else are you doing?
I think that the manager should get most of the blame, while the blame should be shared to everyone on this team. The bat boy, perhaps the guy doing the scoreboard who realizes that the wrong walk-up is cued, but I think the manager has to be the end-all, be-all, that bottleneck that can solve that problem at the end of the day. He has to be the final say. So if the blame has to go somewhere, it's on him, even though I think probably everyone in Mets Nation could take a little bit of this.
During spring training last year, Ichiro Suzuki got a text from Tom Brady asking him about his stretching regimen. He reportedly asked a coach, "Who the bleep is Tom Brady? Fair or foul?"
I'd say it's foul that he didn't know who Tom Brady is, but it's absolutely fair for Ichiro, a guy who is not from here. And the way that I think that this is absolutely real and not a joke is because it wasn't in front of the media. He's not saying, "Who is that guy?" like we see a lot of athletes do. I don't know who that is. But he said it in a private conversation off the cuff to a coach. That's why I think this actually is real, and I think that's hilarious.
I'd say it's fair for two reasons. One, I don't think American football is that big in Japan. And two, Tom Brady just thinks he can text whoever he wants. So even if Ichiro did know who he was and he got a text from Tom Brady out of nowhere, isn't that a little presumptuous for Mr. Brady?
I would say not everyone in the world knows who you are, Tom Brady.
Manny Machado is in a contract year and has been rumored to the Yankees by trade or free agency. But adding Machado to the Yankees' already loaded lineup would be bad for baseball. Fair or foul?
That is foul. How many times does it need to be proven that the Yankees being good is good for baseball? Plus, baseball doesn't work like the other sports. You can stack the team as much as you want. It doesn't guarantee a championship. It's not like adding Kevin Durant to the Warriors. It would make the Yankees really good, that's for sure, but it doesn't make them automatically the World Series winner.
I completely agree. This is a foul. It would be a little bit annoying. It would feel kind of like the Warriors, but that hasn't been bad for basketball because everybody's talking about it for all of these years. So whether people are annoyed, if they're upset, that doesn't mean it's bad for baseball. It just means they're talking about it. Though I would like to see Machado somewhere else just as a fan of the game, spread the wealth around a little bit, but it wouldn't be bad for baseball if he was there.
No batter has ever hit 5 home runs in a game, and no pitcher has ever struck out 21 batters in a game. We'll see the pitching record broken before the home run record. Fair or foul?
This is fair, and I'll tell you why. One of these can be controlled and the other cannot. If I'm a pitcher and a guy hits 3 home runs in a game, I'm walking him the rest of the game. I am not letting anyone get 5 home runs off of me. So the pitching record is much more likely than the hitting record.
If you're the pitcher and you've already let the guy hit 3 home runs, I think if I'm the manager, I'm taking you out of the game. But I agree with you that this is fair because 5 at-bats you might not necessarily even get in a game. A really hot pitcher can mow guys down. It would take a special performance, but I think it is more viable.
Yeah, I hope we see it.